Amendment rights when we don't have it is something that has been completely lost at grave risk, right? The First Amendment was not won easily, right? I mean, that took millennia. If you trace it back to the Magna Carta and all the different steps that it took to achieve these, we are losing dramatically through our fingers very fundamental rights. And I'll just note, I mean, I find it really illustrative just to be self-referential in the context of this conference. There's so much dithering about a presidential election. And with all due respect to whoever asked the first question, this is not a partisan problem. Democrats are up to their necks in this. Close the loop. What does that mean? It means that with respect to civil liberties or constitutional rights, we live in a one-party state.
Yes.
Think about what that means, right? I mean, fascism is rising under our feet, and the whole discourse about who's going to win an election, I mean, I listen to it, and it's just kind of like, what are you smoking, right? And there's more I could say, but I'll say.
Brief follow-up to that. How many sessions at this conference were on civil liberties? Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So I'll say something about that as a moderator and now as someone in the second year, right? There were a couple, and I think that it's important for us to draw the dots, to connect the dots. That last keynote session was on civil liberties, right? But here's what I will say. I will challenge all of you, and this sounds like I'm closing, it's not. But I'll challenge all of you to submit a proposal next year. So last year when I showed up, I said, hey, like, what are we going to do about this? This is a crowdsourced conference. There is responsibility on us to say what we want to show in this process. They're not all going to make it, but the more we submit, the more will come through. Question in the front in the green.
Okay.
Oh, there's two greens right next to you.
Oh,
So you
I'm
can
sorry.
both ask
Which
the question
green?
and then- Go ahead.
I'm black.
Okay, all right.
You're
Okay, I'll go.
More lines.
I think a comment that was made that using Muslims and using terrorism as an excuse to essentially erode our civil liberties has been very effective. I don't know, I imagine a lot of people here have read Dana Priest's Top Secret America, and many things in there are terrifying. It's the book that came after her three-part series in the Washington Post. But what you some of the summary things you observe is that most things have been outsourced to the private sector. Once they're outsourced to the private sector at billions and billions of dollars of taxpayer money, there is no constitutional oversight, no transparency, and everything gets labeled top secret so that then there can't be any oversight and transparency. And it's a vicious cycle that is building a surveillance state for all of us under the guise of looking for Muslims and terrorists that is incredible. And it's very hopeless. One of the things that's in this book that I thought was astonishing is that she cited that there are four Hill staffers that have the security clearances in the background to be able to do all of the oversight for the entire NSA. I mean, this is insane. And I don't know when we have this kind of outsourcing to the private sector, the profit, everything named top secret. How do we stop it? It seems impossible. And we certainly do need to bond together. This isn't about surveillance of the Muslim community entirely, because it's an excuse to survey all of us. There's warrantless surveillance going on constantly. Was there any debate over the new Patriot Act? Nothing. Was it out in the public purview? Nothing. I don't know what we do about this together.
Well, I'm going to phrase mine as a follow-up to yours, the two green shirts in the front, which is the relationship of outsourcing, which is, to what extent it's another form of outsourcing, which is social and cultural and political, as we know, but also non-governmental organizations that are part of this process and culture of surveillance. To what extent is that happening? Last week I saw essentially a Stasi file that a group of students were keeping on other students based on their attitudes towards Middle East policy and so forth. I mean, this is happening. So to what extent is that part of this picture?
I'm sorry.
I'd like to jump in on this. I guess first, I think it's really important to recognize the degree to which crackdowns on activists and crackdowns on communities of color reinforce each other. So, for instance, there's the case of the Cleveland Five, who were arrested just before May Day, and there was an informant who kind of started the whole thing off, who was paid $6,000 plus expenses, and then also reported back that the other people were getting a little suspicious of an undercover cop who was in the group. And so the way that the police dealt with that was by having the undercover undercover officer responsible for supplying the explosives. And I think that just really clearly mirrors what was brought up earlier. And then also the case of high-definition iris images, which have been something that started being labeled as mandatory in the New York City courts in around mid-October. They had been optional, you could refuse them. But basically, with this huge influx of Occupy arrestees, it was a very good excuse in order to be able to force everybody getting arraigned in Manhattan courts to be subjected to basically a photo of your iris that they will keep on file forever, and it means that they'll be able to identify you just based on being able to see this much of your eye. They will know, according to them, for certain that it's you. And then also in terms of outsourcing, when I emailed people I work with at Occupy about COINTELPRO type tactics, every single one of them responded to me by saying that, well, one, you can't really know until afterwards. And sometimes many, many years afterwards, and we may never actually know the full extent, but they all responded citing major concerns of private companies, and especially with something like Occupy Wall Street, which is so, at its root, anti-corporate. I mean,